explain why that happened, why no one was arrested, and how this ordinance would change our ability to regulate who brings what types of weapons to protests in our city.
Robert Day, Deputy Chief. I apologize, Commissioner, that's still being reviewed by the Independent Police Review, so I can't speak to the specifics of August 4th. And I did want to affirm what I heard Mr. Taylor share and a better understanding of your question regarding the perception piece. We are having conversations and understanding with our members to make sure that when we're on the line and when we are present, that we avoid that perception. So I want to recognize that that has been heard, not just here, but in other venues, and we are addressing that piece.
I'd like to give one of you an opportunity to explain the cache of weapons event and explain why that was not a crime and why no arrests were made in that situation. I'm not suggesting they should have been, but because there has been so much confusion in the public and inside this building about that event, I would really love to have it clarified on record.
Brian Lee, Assistant Chief of Police. For clarity, I was not present at that event, but I've reviewed the reports for it. My understanding of that event is that during, immediately prior to the event, as groups were starting to show up, we were literally having a briefing in the Justice Center when people observed large groups on top of the parking structure, which is at First and Jefferson. You can see the top deck from there. We contacted several groups there. One of the groups that was there were individuals that had with them 3 rifles as well as some body armor. Obviously, it's a venue that's raised. That did cause us some concern. We contacted them. They had the weapons stored in a manner that was lawful. They also had a concealed handgun license, which would allow them to have it. There was, as alarming as that conduct, and I understand why that would be alarming to the public, it wasn't unlawful, and we weren't in a position to make an arrest.
That's alarming, but I understand. So I gave myself a time limit. The time limit is up. I actually have 2 more pages of questions. I will send them to you, and I will want to publish the responses because these are questions from constituents and advocacy organizations that I want to make sure and leave plenty of time for public commentary or testimony. So I do have one more question. We have a gang enforcement task force. Why are these right-wing extremist groups being treated as gangs?
Well, investigations, as the chief commented, are based upon behaviors, and so I can tell you that we're looking at behaviors of all groups, whether it be regardless of their association, we're looking for criminal behavior for investigations.
Well,
Excuse me, Robert Day, Deputy Chief.
I don't want to be too confrontational, and I want to make it clear that I like and respect the chief, and I know we have a lot of decent, upstanding officers in our bureau, but I have some grave concerns with the bureau as a body and how they're exercising the power they already have, and that is why I cannot support this ordinance. My friend's son riding in his car with 3 of his friends, all young African Americans, home on spring break from college, were pulled over for suspect behavior. And I agree with Joanne. When I see a truck flying American flags, I mean, it's a sad day when our own flag feels like a threat in our city. I feel threatened. I feel unsafe. I don't understand. I feel threatened by a car full of black teenagers driving through my neighborhood. So I just want to point out that I see an unequal application of our laws, and I fail to understand how the behavior of these right-wing extremist groups is somehow less threatening than black teenagers who aren't doing anything wrong.
Commissioner Salz, since you're going to be providing lots of information to us, could you also quantify how much police overtime has been paid since 2016 related to demonstration events, and how many times precincts have been, had resources diverted? Some of what Representative Biden was talking about below, I don't know if it's been staffing levels, but below some level. So if you could get that information to us, I think that would be useful for us to.
So I provided, Chief Outlaw, Portland Police Bureau, I provided a number since 2016 previously,
Oh, you did?
but I will report back out to give you the specifics. I have a spreadsheet with details that I'll report back on that.
And does that include diversion of resources from other precincts?
That does not, so we'll have to research that information for you to get you those specific details.
And Ms. McCulloch, I stepped out of the room for a second to grab a coffee, but I thought when I heard you coming back, you and Commissioner Fish were talking about perhaps constructive input from the ACLU and how to produce an ordinance that could pass muster with you, or did I mishear that?
Commissioner Saltzman, this is Kimberly McCullough, for folks on the record. We do not think that this ordinance could be remedied by amendment, but we are happy to engage with the city on suggestions about alternatives to the ordinance, and certainly are engaging in research and outreach to other jurisdictions to try to figure out if there are some alternatives that we could get other folks to suggest as well.
And by alternatives, you mean possibly, like, list of alternatives could include an ordinance? Or is it still?
I don't know
we have to
that, I don't know that it requires an ordinance, or if it requires just a change in practices, or if it requires something more creative. I think that this is something that we need to continue to engage in collaborative conversations with our communities about. But as to this specific ordinance, there are some really difficult constitutional hurdles to get over when you are basing restrictions on past activities and on predictions about future activities. That piece of it, and the fact that that's the core of the ordinance, is just not something that we think you can overcome.
I guess I'm just trying to get at, in all honesty, whether we can get past sort of the two schools of thought here. Is one is, we need something, to respond to what I think are situations that are ultimately going to result in Portlanders killed, maimed, permanently paralyzed. Or can we are we going to sort of, and the other school of thought, which is we already have the tools, it's just the question of using the tools right. So I'm just trying to figure if we can bridge that gap, or do we just sort of need to, those of us up here have to choose which avenue we believe is going to be the most productive in keeping Portlanders protected.
Commissioner Saltzman, I appreciate what you're getting at, and my hope is that through engaging in conversation, we can actually reach consensus on what the best path forward is. I don't think it needs to be like I said earlier, I don't think this needs to be a situation where folks essentially coming into our city and causing difficulties cause us to be head-to-head. I think Portland is a very special place. We have a really amazing community, and I think we can work together to find solutions.
Thank you.
Mayor, Commissioner Fish. I know we're about to say thank you to this panel and move on to public testimony. First, we're going to take some amendments, then to public testimony. I'm knocked out Friday and Monday with treatment. We've asked for some follow-up stuff. Commissioner Daly has posed a number of questions. There's been other questions posed. I've asked some questions of the ACLU. We're obviously operating under, at least currently, a compact time frame. Who knows whether that will change. It would be helpful, though, to get some answers, say Monday, Tuesday. I think this is coming back, at least preliminarily, is scheduled for Wednesday afternoon. Whether that holds or not is a council decision. But just in terms of timeline, I would love to see some initial responses on Tuesday of materials that you want us to review. And if we need more time, we're going to take more time. We're going to do this right. So thank you. Thank you all. Commissioner Daly, sorry.
You're fine to leave. I just have
Thank you all.
a small request. We have representatives from the Urban League here who've been engaged with our office, and I believe others on this issue. Could we invite them to speak?
Well, let's do this. Let's amend the amendments, and then let's get to public testimony.
I think we can fix it.
Yeah. Are they signed up, Commissioner?
They're signed up. There's just one.
So we have a number of amendments on,
Mayor, can I walk you through my?
yeah, please, why don't you do that? Commissioner, one, two,
So I want to be clear, in the limited time I've had to review this matter, and some of the communication I've received from the public and others, it has caused me to reflect on a number of amendments. These would be things that I think need to be fixed, whether this passes or not. But we have a limited opportunity to propose amendments, so I'm going to put these on the table for public feedback. There are 3 amendments. Fish Amendment 1 amends the Directive K on page 7 of the ordinance. I'll just paraphrase. To provide that the commissioner in charge should provide a written report to the council and the public describing whether the regulations were effective and the lessons that might be learned for future written orders. So we have a tradition in this body of memos from the legal department often coming to us with a cloak of confidentiality. This is designed to make clear that whatever after-action report is submitted by the mayor is reviewable by the public and the council at the same time. I would ask for a second on this one. Fish Amendment 2 would change Directive L on page 7 as follows. This ordinance shall be in full force and effect through strike December 31st and insert June 30th, 2019, after which the ordinance shall expire unless renewed by council. What this does is create a 6-month sunset in lieu of a 12-month sunset. I'd ask for a second for this amendment. Fish Amendment 3 adds a directive N on page 7 as follows. Quote, to allow council to consider additional tools to address the concerns with demonstrations identified in this ordinance. The Office of the City Attorney is directed to report to council no later than January 10th, 2019, with an evaluation of additional legal options, including under the Oregon Constitution, Article 1, Section 27, quote, the military shall be kept in strict subordination to civil power, end quote. ORS 166.660, that refers to unlawful paramilitary activity, and ORS 221.915, as a nuisance defined by city ordinance, and any other identified options.
And I got something to say about Chloe.
So Mayor, those are my 3 amendments, and they're now on the table.
very good. Colleagues, as the commissioner proposing the substitute ordinance, I find none of these controversial. I would propose we just call the roll on Fish 1.
I'm going to take testimony first.
If we want to do it at the end of the testimony, that's fine. I don't see them as substantially controversial.
Isn't it?
Public testimony.
Okay, I thought we wanted people to give testimony on the actual item.
No, they're on the table now. We heard Representative Bynum said that she thought it should be 60 to 90 days, for example, for the sunset facts. So for us to vote on a 6 months without being testimony, when people have been waiting for over 2 hours now.
Okay, fair enough. Public testimony, 2 minutes each, name for the record, microphones slide around. Please, people, if you hear opinions that are different than yours, it's okay. Let's all be respectful of people's opinions. We always call people who may have disabilities or people with children first.
We have about 36 people signed up.
36, 2 minutes each, good enough.
So those who have disabilities or people with children, just go ahead and come up first.
Joe Walsh.
Just be sure to state your name so I can mark you off the list. Thank you.
My name is Philip J. Wolf. May I go ahead and start now?
Yes, please.
Great. Hello, Mayor Wheeler. Hello, City Commissioners. And most importantly, hello to all of our constituents and community members here. I wanted to also thank the Chief of Police for coming and sitting and hearing us today. Thank you very much for staying through the public testimony. I think it's important that we stay through all of that and get to hear it together. I wanted to drive a point home about the ordinance that I have a concern about. Hopefully that you will understand that this will contribute to a lot of the problems that we have. I think that we're compromising the safety of a lot of Portlanders with this ordinance. First, I would like to review a couple of points and then I'll make sure to wrap up. I've been to a number of protests since I've lived in the city, and I've never seen any of you at any of the protests I've ever been to. I've been at March for Our Lives, at Black Lives Matter, at motions and activities for people who were killed by the Portland police. I've actually led a protest last fall for